Hi class, this is a study guide for our test on really our first test this year. As you know, this will be on Friday, September 19th, and I put together a guide here, and I thought I'd discuss it, kind of run through this with you and discuss some of the things I'd like you to know in order to prepare for that. We've accomplished an awful lot in the first 3 weeks, and I commend you for a great effort in class and the labs. I really like our spirit of collaboration. So let's get down here. This is Unit 1, which is Earth Systems and Resources. This is not, we will have another test within this unit of this Earth Systems and Resources, but these are some of the major items that I want you to study. And these are the things we've talked about in class. So let's go through these. I would expect you to be familiar with the major themes in environmental science. We talked about the population growth is the major problem environmentally. Population growth leads to many other problems. It leads to the need for example, for deforestation. That causes a huge, because the deforestation is often needed to basically to feed people for extra agricultural land. The deforestation leads to severe problems with soil, topsoil loss, soil erosion. Tree loss hurts the cause, if you will, towards global warming, because there's fewer trees to take up the carbon dioxide. Sustainability is the environmental goal. All right, that's the major environment. And actually looked at it fairly extensively, I think, in the Easter Island. We need to think about global perspectives on problems and solutions. So we're not talking about, when we talk about the environment, we're really not talking about just the environment in the United States. We're talking about the environment in China and Europe, and how does that impact us? An urbanizing world, this trend toward moving towards cities and stuff. People and nature, what's the impact? What impact do we have on nature? As an example, we're driving more cars now. That puts a lot of carbon dioxide in the air. There's there's just more people. That's more carbon dioxide in the air. The Industrial Revolution has spawned a lot of factories. That's a lot of smokestacks putting CO2 into the air. It does put a lot of people to work. It gives us a high standard of living, but there's a cost to that environmentally, so we need to talk about that. And science and values, how science cannot make value judgments. This week we're going to be looking at some categories of justifications for environmental values. Some of these include utilitarian justification, ecological justification, aesthetic, or how beautiful something is, and the moral justification for that. I would be familiar with the tragedy of the commons. If you remember, we had a lab. That our knowledge of that lab will be assessed, or make sure I go through that lab report. You should know what carrying capacity is, as well as some examples of commons. I thought we did a real good job on this. Specific heat, we'll talk about. Specific heat was a lab if you remember, we heated soil and heated water. Talked about how the differences in specific heat between water and soil govern weather patterns. Bodies of water, the result of this is that bodies of water modulate climate. So they allow, if I just have soil only, I'm going to have large disparities in climate and temperature. All right, whereas if I just have water, if I have water nearby, water has a tendency to level out those highs and those lows. So it's a terrific modulator of climate. You should know why that's the case. You should know about the local weather patterns. We talked about how the lake cools, Lake Michigan, for example, cools the city in the summer and heats it up in the winter. How does that work? How does the flow of air work with that? You should be familiar with the distinctions of weather and climate. We did a good job on that. Weather would be, of course, a kind of a short-term, today's outside conditions. Climate would be kind of a long-term, what's it like around the equator in the summer months or something like that. or what's it like in Alaska in the summer months? What is specific heat? How does the specific heat of water compare to oil, etc., or soil? Excuse me. Specific heat of water is very high. Soil is very low. So soil will heat up quickly, and it will cool off quickly. Water takes a long time to heat up and a long time to cool off. By the way, our bodies are largely made of water. Largely made of water, which allows us, incidentally, to give basically to take on tremendous amounts of heat when we exercise, whether it's running or dancing or playing soccer or whatever, baseball, and we can take on tremendous amounts of heat with only a really small change in temperature, and that's because we're largely made of water. Easter Island, you should go over that. We had a free response question on that. That's really about the idea of sustainability. We calculated ecological footprints. You should I would glance at that last page of that handout just think about some ideas for improving our efficiency from an ecological individual. It may not be much, but if we each do something individually and look at it from a collective standpoint, wow, it can make a big impact. And that's what we need to be thinking about. We need to be big-time thinkers here. You should be familiar with the parameters of a controlled experiment. We're looking at this now in the POGIL activity. You should understand about the central question being addressed by the experiment, how hypotheses are developed, what a hypothesis is, an independent variable, sometimes called a manipulated variable, and identifying that, as well as a dependent variable, or called a responding variable. All right, as well as controls. What's my reference? Control is basically a reference point. All right. While we were doing that POGIL, we also had a demonstration in the back of photosynthesis and cell respiration. I would expect you to be familiar with the basics of photosynthesis. I'm not going to ask you about every last electron, but you should know some of the reactants and products. These are the reactants of photosynthesis: carbon dioxide, water, sunlight, and chlorophyll. These are the two products: glucose, C6H12O6, and oxygen. So photosynthesis produces chemical energy in the form of glucose and sugars and oxygen. You should be familiar with cell respiration, where those plant will exhibit cell respiration. We exhibit cell respiration. Taking glucose or stored chemical energy plus oxygen, and as a result of that, producing carbon dioxide and water and energy. This is in the form of ATP. You saw a demonstration of that in the back when I set that up with the Vernier unit in the back, that demonstration. You should know about global processes. We've looked at these. We've had a couple of assessments on these, as well as some lab work on it as well. How global processes determine weather and climate. The first would be the uneven heating of the Earth, solar intensity and latitude, the atmospheric convection currents. You should know and be able to apply some knowledge to questions about properties of air causing them, the density of air at different temperatures. Warm air is dense, warm air is less dense than cold air, so it's going to rise. Cold air is more dense than warm air, so it's going to fall, etc. Water vapor capacity, how more heat allows you to hold more water vapor. Adiabatic heating and cooling, which is about how the surrounding low and high pressure areas allow cooling and heating to take place. And latent heat release, when a water vapor condenses, released to a liquid form as it forms with rain. The idea being, when that happens, that heat is passed on to the air, which is warmed up and rises. The rotation of the Earth and its axis just allows for day and night. I would know about the sun's tilt causing the seasons. Talked about a couple of cool applications of that. The trees shedding the leaves in the fall color, trees shedding the leaves to slow the rate of transpiration during dry climates. The fall colors, because there's fewer light hours in the as we proceed from now through December. Less light means less photosynthesis taking place. So the green colors of the leaves, the green pigment is basically disappearing, and those beautiful pigments underneath the green are now appearing to us. You should know about the ocean currents and the ocean conveyor belt, which is basically a large system that operates on a thermohaline gradient. Basically, cold, salty water sinks, warm, less salty water rises. And there's a large conveyor belt system that acts to help cool various climates. Is responsible for modulating temperatures in places like England and really several continents. You should be familiar with the core link for you on that. Make sure you go over that link. It explains about how this gets started, what starts the conveyor belt, where it goes. It's pretty cool and it's pretty straight to the point. Should know about the Coriolis effect, how the Earth's rotation deflects the wind. Talked about the Earth's rotation a little bit earlier. Atmospheric composition. I would know the 5 layers basically of the atmosphere, starting with the I would know them in order. The closest one to the Earth would be the troposphere. The next would be the stratosphere and so forth. The stratosphere is where the UV layer is, or the UV protection layer is called the ozone layer. So we'll say troposphere. And then the stratosphere. Those are the two most important. You've also got the thermosphere and the exosphere and so forth above there. I would be familiar with the temperature and altitude relationships in each of the, basically in each of the layers of the atmosphere. I would also be familiar with the idea of albedo, which is how much light is reflected by the Earth. Basically, that's controlled often by color. So areas that are white we know reflects reflects light. So if there's a lot of snow, that would typically reflect away the heat from the sun. And some other things I would expect you to know just on kind of these 5 topics. These are big in environmental science, and we have talked about this, so I do expect you to know something about them. Causes of acid rain, when the pH of acid goes or pH of rain is depressed because of the effect of sulfur. Where does the sulfur come from? It comes from the coal, basically. It's the largest culprit or largest use. Where is the coal used? Well, a significant portion of the coal, not all of it, but a significant portion, is used in burning, is burned in power plants as the fuel source, the source of energy that's basically converted for our electricity. I would know about global climate change. You should have an idea. The UV rays from the sun come through our atmosphere, basically heat up the Earth. After they do so, they lose some energy and become like infrared rays, which have less energy. This energy should radiate out to the atmosphere, and it does not, because or some of it is not. The fear is because of the greenhouse gases are trapping this IR and causing the subsequent atmospheric temperature increases to go. I would know these 3 as the big the major greenhouse gases: CO2, H2O, and methane. I would know something about the importance of trees. This is only a partial listing of trees, but trees are amazing in how they help control flooding. They stop soil erosion, they provide shade, they provide medicinal products and food, they provide a habitat for many species of animals and so forth. So I would know something also about transpiration, and maybe an application from there. Factors affecting transpiration. Air temperature. If the air is warm, it can hold more moisture. That means the tree can transpire more. The amount of leaves. Remember, transpiration, by the way, I'll just draw it down here. And we can review this week, but we had this illustration earlier. Here's my tree transpiration. Basically means that water is taken up by the roots. All right, it goes up the tree from the roots all the way out the leaves to the atmosphere. To the atmosphere through the leaves. And this is why trees are so proficient at controlling floods. That's why they're so good at keeping water puddles down and so forth. All right. It also explains why a tree will shed leaves during this time of year, because you want to slow this rate of transpiration. The water, by the way, serves as the carrier for all kinds of nutrients to get into the, let's see, water is the carrier. All right, for all kinds of nutrients. That's how the nutrients get up into the tree, things like fertilizer and stuff like that, just nitrogen, phosphorus. And also we talked a little bit about negative and positive feedback loops or mechanisms. When we did the specific heat lab, we talked about this, and we can review this week also. But basically, negative and feedback loops or mechanisms would be a negative feedback ability like a thermostat would. All right, whereas a positive feedback promotes instability. It exacerbates a problem. All right, so those are some of the, this would be, for I think an example we looked at would be drinking water, regular water, tap water to quench your thirst. That's a great example of negative feedback. I quenched my thirst, drank the water, quenched the thirst. For positive feedback would be drinking salt water, because I'm going to make myself thirstier. So it's making the thirst problem worse or exacerbating the problem. So those are the major things that I would hold you accountable for on the test. And I look forward to chatting with you this week. Thank you.